Welcome to Athlon U. My name is Braden Gall, and I did not lose my favorite football jersey.
And I'm Steven Lassen, and apparently I did lose my favorite football jersey. You can find me, as always, and on your favorite doom scrolling, rage scrolling social media apps, and also read all my work at Athlon Sports.
Get all your rage out at athlonsports.com. No, you can follow me on the internet as well. Today on the show, Group of Five, across the board preview for all of you folks out there. We did not get a chance to get to the quarterbacks in our quarterback conversation on last week's pod, so we're going to dive into the G5 All-Americans is what I'm going to call them. The G5 All-Americans. We're going to get the best quarterbacks in the Group of Five. There is some news, of course, we start with because G5 teams are moving all over the country these days, so they're changing leagues. So we'll start with some of that. We will get into the independents as well, Notre Dame, Oregon State, Washington State, UConn, etc. We'll get into those, and then we'll give you what should the competitive balance of each of these G5 leagues look like as we head into the season based on our rankings in the preseason magazine. Go pick up one of those magazines, Stephen, right now at a bookstore near you, a newsstand near you, a grocery store, or a drugstore, and of course on the interwebs, athlonsports.com. Buy those magazines and have them shipped directly to your house. Pick out the cover you want. It's great.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to get them, right? You don't have to go to the newsstand or the bookstore or the grocery store and fight the crowds or, try to fight to find a sports magazine these days. It seems like it's harder on the newsstand. It seems like there's like a billion crossword puzzles and like entertainment magazines. But yes, athlonsports.com, magazines at the very top, takes you to our store. You can order whichever cover you like and we'll get it shipped to you.
There's a lot of people that wish there was crowds at the newsstands.
There is it all the time at like my
There's
local
not.
Kroger. Yes, there is. It's like the same like people, like they're clogging up the books that are off to the side. There's people at the magazines. They all look at the entertainment and the crossword puzzles and the like the wedding magazine and all those. So
Wow, the wedding magazine.
there's like a bunch of them there. I was surprised. Like the sports section's like at the very end, so I'm trying to like squeeze my way into the sports magazines.
If you are watching on YouTube, please thumbs up. Notifications turned on. If you're listening on a podcast app of choice, please write a review. We do appreciate it. That is how people find us. 5 stars only. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a
Hater.
There you go. Still pretty dad. Still lots of dad energy.
I mean, I feel like I'm under attack as we start this episode because I can't find a football jersey and now I can't get the hater part right. So
What? Okay, you lost the Dan Lefevre Central Michigan Chippewas jersey. You
I
lost it.
I didn't lose it. It's one of those things that I knew where it was before my child was born, and then I had to quickly get everything out of this room, and now there is a like mass of stuff downstairs in my podcast work area, and I just need to sort through it. So it's
Well,
there.
you better find it because I'm so proud of you for having that. And if you lose a Dan Lefevre jersey just because you became a parent, that's a lack of priorities, my guy.
Do you think I would lose a Dan Lefevre jersey? I mean, really?
No.
I mean, I want to chase Clement Rice jersey or James Casey or Jared Dillard one, but I settled for a Dan Lefevre jersey. I'm not losing that.
Fair enough. All right, let's get into it here, Lasso. Let's get into it. And the first is the news, which is these teams are changing. We've talked about this. You and I have covered Texas State on the show. Of course, they're moving to the Pac-12. That is now official. That was official kind of before July 1 for a lot of financial reasons, monetary reasons. And we thought that the next step after that, the domino, would be the Sun Belt filling the gap of the loss by Texas State by going to acquire Louisiana Tech. They already have Louisiana and UL Monroe in the Western Division, so now they're going to add Louisiana Tech. I believe that vote was finalized. It's not been like officially officialized, is that a term? But it's been voted on, and they will invite them, and I imagine they will accept them. So it does further clarify the pecking order. The Pac-12, in all of its 2-team current glory, future 8-team glory, is already a more prominent and more attractive league than the Sun Belt, and the Sun Belt is a significantly more attractive league than Conference USA. That's just the way this works now. So I don't know if there's any more corresponding moves. There could be. I do think the Sun Belt is smart to sort of keep it in the brand, in the region, in Louisiana. I think that's a smart strategy. They've been running that strategy since the beginning. When they have expanded, they've always expanded in kind of a different way than some of the other leagues. And so I think it's a smart move. Louisiana Tech's a solid program. So there you go. There's the big news.
So speaking of like throwback stuff, I was moving around some stuff in my office and I found a Sunbelt like 2007 DVD. And it is funny to like look at the teams on the cover because I think North Texas and Florida Atlantic were on there. So
A digital video disc?
yeah, I happen to be a big fan of keeping like physical media around, so I don't have to rely on
What
the internet to give me things.
are you what's the new type of movie physical media? Like Steel or something? Like what's the new it's
Um,
after Blu-ray. You know what I'm saying? Like my dad's all into this stuff and I'm just like the only physical media I'm into is vinyl cuz vinyl actually sounds better, but I don't know. Like I'm good with streaming. I don't know.
I'm not up to date on that one, so I had to plead a little bit of ignorance there. But bring that DVD up also because Braden and I also brought this special prop as we are talking about the Sun Belt. I
Ooh.
figured little Louisiana Tech love here. Um, for the Sun Belt, it just makes a ton of sense. You mentioned it, like they have concentrated a lot on geography, rivalries, like leaning into your footprint. And it's not like chasing markets. They've gone after fulfilling that footprint. And it puts them right there with rivalries with Southern Miss, Louisiana Monroe. So it just makes a ton of sense. Like it may not be the most exciting move. Some people I think in the Sun Belt would rather see Western Kentucky or Middle Tennessee. But I think given all the geography, they needed a team for the West Division. You throw in some rivalries, it keeps filling in geography. It just makes a ton of sense for the Sun Belt.
And based on our rankings, Louisiana Tech's a top 4 team in the preseason for Conference USA. They've had some really established head coaches over the years, over the last 25 years, and they've had some good teams and some good players. Looking at you, Tim Rattay. So we shall
Troy
see.
Edwards.
Troy Edwards, that's right,
Yeah.
all time single season reception leader until until recently. So there you go. Big news there. I think the Sun Belt's strategy is a long-term strategy that will hold. And we laugh about like these conferences with these numbers and the number Pac-12. Well, that's hilarious when it's 2 teams and 8 and 10. It's just, the Big 10 now has 18, like all these numbers. Well, the Sun Belt has always been about the Sun Belt, and it's always been about a regional southern sort of footprint. They're not really expanding the footprint all that much, but they've got some good brands in here. And when they expand, they grab another team that sort of fits exactly the identity and the mold. And I think that's smart. The MAC has done this since the beginning. Maybe it's not as good a football, but it's been the same. We're going to be Mid-American. We're going to be the Mid-American Conference. We're going to dominate on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we're going to do our own thing. And I think the Sun Belt's doing the same thing, and I think it's smart. And I think Louisiana Tech's a smart pick. I don't know. Yeah, like you said, I don't know what's next, but we shall see. So that's the. I think what's interesting, and with revenue sharing, how many of these G5 teams are going to opt in to any of this amount of money so that they can, again, if you are, I'm just looking at like, I'm going to go to the AAC for this. Like, if East Carolina and Memphis is a good example because Memphis might have the most money. So let's go to Memphis. If Memphis just decides that, hey, we're going to opt into this revenue sharing thing and we could pay $10 million a year and no one else in our conference can do that, all of a sudden Memphis becomes the best recruiter and the top roster in the league almost every year. You can dominate a G5 league with a smaller investment than you can at the big school level. So, which is common sense. I get that, but I do think it's fascinating. Like the earth shaking under their feet affects a lot more G5 stuff than it does the Power Five. That's for sure.
Yeah, and if you go back to Texas State joining the Pac-12, I do think there is, you've seen some rumblings about this from, people who cover the G5. Like, what about the split that could come? Like, power conferences and even group of 5 conferences, like Texas State being grouped with Boise State's probably a good thing. Like long term,
Yep.
being with some of those teams that are going to be investing in football and are at the hierarchy of the top of the G5 is a good thing. And I think with Conference USA, it seems like they're not going to add any more teams. Like based upon like Brett McMurphy and some of the other reporters, they're going to stay at 10 for 2026. Like if I was the Sun Belt and you could financially pull that off, wouldn't you want to make a play at like Western and Middle Tennessee just to kind of fill in some of the rest of the belt there and bring some of those teams back in the conference? But I think for now, we say this, that there's probably not going to be a ton of movement outside of maybe something here or there in realignment, maybe until the late 2020s, early 2030s, maybe.
So they lose Texas State, they gain Louisiana Tech. They're still at 14. If you add Western and Middle, you're at 16. And Certainly, those are two good rivals there. They're very much in the sun. They're very much in the footprint. I think Western is a value. I always am shocked that Middle Tennessee is not, as you know, they have a huge alumni base and a large demographic in the market. I don't know. It's close to Nashville. Like, I just don't understand why that's not been a more successful brand, but very transient suitcase sort of carpet bag weekender kind of school. As I drove home a lot my freshman year at Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, let's talk quarterbacks here, Stephen. And I think that we didn't have a single quarterback from the G5 in our top 25 nationally last week. If you had to go All-American, G5 All-Americans, and you can do 4 if you want here, I want to know who your 4 G5 All-Americans are, and we're not counting Malik Murphy at Oregon State or CJ Carr at Notre Dame. We'll talk about those teams in just a second.
So I think my top 4 would probably be something like this. And this is, I should say, I think this is a very challenging exercise because a lot of these G5 teams have changed quarterbacks this year, and a lot of them transferred in some of their supporting cast. So it's challenging. At number 4, I'm going to go take a little bit of a gamble here. I'm going to go Owen McCown at UTSA. I think with the receivers they got coming back, we saw this at the end of last year, putting up huge numbers for UTSA. I think he's going to be even better this year. At 3, I got Byron Brown from South Florida. I think a lot of people are forgetting about how good Byron Brown was in Alex Golish's first year, averaged over 350 total yards a game. Banged up last year. He's back this year. I think he's going to be even better in 2025. I got Blake Horvath of Navy at 2. Nearly, is it over 30 total touchdowns, over 1,000 yards rushing, kind of that step forward this year. And at 1, I've got the solid Maddox Madsen at Boise State. With Ashton Jeanty off to the NFL, I think he will have to take on a little bit more of that offensive focal point for Boise State.
So this is a super scientific piece of analysis. Maddox Madsen, not a great quarterback name. It's just like it's too much of the same word, too much of the same sound in my mouth. It's not as easy to say as you'd want it to be. Just kind of like the way he plays.
Yeah, he's solid. Yes.
Just solid. All right, number 4 on my list. I'm going to go with, and this is not because his name is Braden, because he spells it wrong, and I don't like that with the extra Y. What's the deal with these extra Ys? Braden Fowler, Nicolosi at Colorado State. I'm going to go with him at number 4. I just think he's a gamer. I like his play. Had 18 touchdowns total last year, over 60% completion percentage. I think that they could be sneaky good again this year. Not sure how if they're getting close to the Mountain West championship game. But if they are, and they were kind of on the outside looking in of that for a little while last year, I think I'd put him at number 4. There's some other names, Brandon Lewis, DeQuan Finn. You mentioned McCown at UTSA. I think there's a lot of names that could be totally worth being on this list. I would go with Maddox Madsen. I just don't know why I can't say that well. At number 3, Boise State. I'm going Byron Brown number 2. I just think his athletic ability and upside is greater than that of Madsen, so I'm going to put it number 2, and then Blake Horvath at number 1. Your starting quarterback at Navy. I think there's a no-brainer there. So would Horvath be top 30 nationally? Is he like 26 on your list? Like, where would he be in your top over in your national rankings?
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys would fall somewhere like 20 to 30 or so. We are going to do the full 136 quarterback rankings coming up on athlonsports.com. Shameless plug, coming up in a few weeks. So we'll drill down a little bit deeper, but I think Braden, I think all those guys are like 20 to 30 top quarterbacks. And again, this also gets at, a lot of these guys that were top G5ers in the past, they've transferred. So in the past, that you'd see some of these guys rank higher. That's not the case.
Curtis O'Rourke journey.
Yes, like guys like that. Transferring to play at a power conference has kind of changed the balance of power here. I did want to mention one name that just missed my list, and that is Maverick McIver of Western Kentucky. I've got him first team Conference USA. He started his career at Texas Tech. He went to Abilene Christian. They are bringing in the OC from Abilene Christian, and they're bringing in McIver. They are going to throw the ball around a ton and put up huge numbers. So
it's like 2 of my favorite fictional characters from my childhood in one name. I love that, Maverick and McIver. So here's the thing, and this is maybe an interesting study that we can do moving forward. It used to be when I started, when you and I got started in like 07, 08 around this, the number of like rock star G5 quarterbacks that were putting up historic numbers, it was every year there was like 2 or 3 or 4 awesome guys. And I realized that transferring in the portal have changed a lot of that and a lot of those dynamics. But I also think it's that you don't have the breakout superstars anymore, because if you're that good, you're getting an offer of millions of dollars to leave Tulane to go to Duke. Like, that's where we are. But it also means that the stars are going to come out of nowhere. So while we have our, I have my 4 to 6 or 7 guys that I think are the best, you have your list, that there's a good chance that a random starter at a random school that we've never heard of is the guy who takes off and becomes a superstar, because they're just so many new faces just getting opportunities to play because people have transferred. So I still think there can be some star power at this position in the G5, but it's just going to be different. We're going to find it in a different way, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of opportunities for bounce backs for power conference quarterbacks, and one name
Yeah.
in
Oh, yeah.
particular was Anthony Colandrea at UNLV for Virginia. I think you get the bounce backs like that. But also, I think, to your point, and this is something that I wrestle with, and it also plays into our predictions, which is there will be some guys who break out this year. There are
Yeah.
opportunities everywhere for
Yeah.
quarterbacks, and also it's kind of like shaping like who you think is going to be good this year. Like which one of these quarterbacks are going to break out, because some of these leagues are so wide open.
So I'm not going to really include Notre Dame in this conversation because I think they're a top 10 team in the preseason. CJ Carr is probably a better quarterback than all these guys we just talked about in terms of talent. They operate in a different world. They operate where Alabama and Ohio State and Texas and Georgia are. So I'm gonna kind of remove Notre Dame for this conversation. But the other independents do function a lot like G5s. I mean, UConn, Washington State, Oregon State, as for right now, and frankly, Wazoo and the Beavers are going to be in what amounts to a very good G5 league starting next year. So, where are you on the preseason rankings? I know they're basically all back to back to back, pretty deep in our rankings, but Washington State and Oregon State have felt the fall quickly from a power league to where they are today.
Yeah, I think with Washington State, I think the interesting thing is like how much of an overhaul they're going through, because they brought in Jimmy Rogers, who was the head coach at South Dakota State. He brought in a lot of players from South Dakota State, but it's the scheme overhaul. We think about Washington State, we think about high powered offenses, they're going to throw the ball around. They're actually going to be a running team based upon what they've talked about the sauce. They're going to try and be more of a run focused team. So it's kind of like a complete, culture and scheme change there. And I think for Oregon State, they had such a great start last year. They kind of fell apart in the second half of the season. They went out and got Malik Murphy to kind of solidify the quarterback spot. Their schedule, very favorable this year. They're one of, I think, a lot of bettors. They're over for Oregon State. That's going Oregon State in the over is a very popular preseason prediction out in Vegas, but also I think probably good optimism for bounce back if you've got a good quarterback like Malik Murphy, and also Trent Bray taking over the defensive play calling abilities there at Oregon State should help them. So I think they'll be better. With Washington State, they got 0 returning starters on defense and 3 on offense, and that whole scheme change, this is a total unknown this year.
See, they're functioning exactly like a Group of 5 team. I'm very excited about the new league. Honestly, I'm very excited. I know it's a bummer for Mountain West purists like I used to be. I used to love the old Mountain West, when it was BYU and Utah and TCU and Boise State. It was such a fun league, and I've always loved like the energy and the culture around the Mountain West. And now it's just I do think it's better with Oregon State and Washington State, and just kind of the creme de la creme of the Mountain West. But the Mountain West is such a great brand, such a good logo, such a good deal, and I'm excited about the new one, but bummed out about the old one. So which is sort of like being a college football fan, all encapsulated into one sentence over the last 20 years. All right, let's talk conference by conference here. You ready to do it?
Yeah, let's do it. This ought to be some of our most wide open conference battles are in the G5 this year.
So I'm gonna start each conference with sort of like, here's what our rankings. Here is the story our rankings are telling about this league going into the season, knowing full well that these leagues are even more unpredictable from a roster standpoint and from a standing standpoint than the big leagues are, because we just don't have the same level of information about these players, coaches, schemes, etc. If you look at the AAC, I think it is the best league of the G5. I think for right now, I'm willing to be open minded and see how the Mountain West does. Sun Belt's really balanced. We'll get to all this, but there's a story that I think our rankings tell about each league. And the story around the AAC is that Tulane and Navy, who are 1 and 2 to play in the championship game based on our predictions, are a slight step ahead of everybody else, but that really the top 6 or 8 are all really, really competitive, are all potentially top 70, kind of in that power conference range. Because if you start to look at G5 rankings, generally it was after 70 is where you get any power team ranked after 70 is a bad power conference team. And then anybody ranked in the top sort of 60 from the G5 is viewed as kind of one of the better teams. And I think if you were doing a G5 top 25, right? I think like 8 of the top, 15 or 20 maybe are coming from the AAC. Is that the right story that people should have about the AAC from our rankings?
Yes. I think that is a perfect way to sum up the conference this year. There is a very crowded race at the top. I think I'd probably put like the top 6, and then the next 2 are kind of clustered, and then you get to the bottom of the league. I think the tiers in this conference are very defined. I think the top, like I said, top 6, 2, and then the rest. Also, I would note there are 6 new coaches in the American this year too. A lot of those are what teams at the bottom. It's kind of why they're picked at the bottom. But in general, when you go through some of the depth charts and you look at some of the returning or not returning players, a lot of these G5 teams have like 3 returning starters, 2 returning starters, 5. Like there is a significant amount of turnover in these leagues. So to your point, even though I feel good about the top 6 to 8 in this conference, there could easily be a wild card team or 2 emerge.
All right, so Tulane over Navy. Why are they the best 2 teams? And you have them both inside the top 50 nationally.
For Tulane, I think it's a trust in John Summerall. Yes, they do lose a lot. I think they've reloaded quite well through the portal. Also think their defense will be one of the better groups in the group of 5. So trust in John Summerall. They have some interesting quarterbacks, whether it's Brendan Sullivan from Iowa, Caden Samanza from Ball State. So again, faith in John Summerall to put this back together. And then for Navy, coming off a 10-win season, they get Blake Horvath back. Also, I love their schedule. They have to play South Florida, but they get them at home. Army it's a conference game, but it's at the end of the year, and it's technically a non-conference game. So they won't play Tulane. They have to play at Memphis late in the season, but the schedule is really favorable for Navy. I think they don't play a team that made a bowl game last year. They won't play a team that made a bowl game last year until they play North Texas. So basically in November. Their schedule is really favorable this year.
If you had to look at this top 6 or 8 and give me the best units, like UTSA's offense, right? You've already talked about McCown. Like, give me the best 2 or 3 units. Is it somebody's offense? Is it somebody's defense? The most dependable and probably most predictable unit of these top 6 or 8 teams, not counting Tulane or Navy, of the next teams. Where would you go?
Well, it's a good question. I know you're only asking for 2, but I would almost say South Florida's offense. I trust Alex Golish and Byron Brown. UTSA's offense brings back pretty much everybody. And Army's offense. Yes, they are losing Captain America, Bryson Daly, but I think you kind of just trust Jeff Monken to reload here. So I would go with all those offenses. I think those are probably the most trustworthy.
There's not a defense in this group that you think could lead them to surging to the conference championship, the race at the end of November.
So UTSA brings back zero returning starters on defense, so they are a complete unknown. South Florida's had some questions. I think to answer your question, if you're looking for something, Army or Memphis, like maybe one of those 2 defenses put it together. Again, Memphis lost a lot. Tulane and Navy, I would put in their own category because I know we're not talking about them, but those 2 teams, to me, they're going to be 2 of the better defenses. Maybe Army pieces it back together. Maybe Memphis does. Those are probably your most likely teams to kind of exceed expectations there.
East Carolina at 7, North Texas at 8. Those are the 2 that are kind of like, we think they could be competitors in this league, but we're not really sure. But they're clearly better than the bottom half of the league, which features a bunch of programs that really struggle. Although Temple with Casey Keeler as their head coach, and now Tim Albin at Charlotte, I think keep an eye on both of those 2 because I like those 2 coaching hires by those two programs. I think I don't know how quickly those 2 coaches have an impact on those programs, but there is some upward mobility in this conference. So
Yeah, there really is. I think East Carolina is interesting because of how they finished last year. Like, they turned a corner once Blake Harrell became interim coach, then he won the job. They are keeping, kind of the same thing offensively with Caton Hauser coming back at quarterback. So, r- kind of gaining again on that momentum is going to be hard, but they were much better in the second half. I think the team to watch here has got to be North Texas because we know Eric Morris is going to find a way to score points. They lost Chandler Morris as a transfer to Virginia, but I will point you to they have two of the best quarterback names in college football. And Zach was it Mestamaker, who played really well in the bowl game, and also Reese Poffenbarger, who played before at Miami and Albany. So, or Drew Mestamaker, sorry.
Say both of those names back to back as fast as you can.
Reese Poffenbarger and Zach, sorry, I say Zach, Drew Mestamaker. I keep messing this up. Why do I've done this like 8 times now. So, uh, so they will score points and also go back to our coordinator show. Skylar Cassidy coming over from Sam Houston, and he brings some Sam Houston players over. Their defense is going to be significantly better. I like North Texas as a sleeper in this conference.
Awesome. How many teams could contend out of this league for a playoff spot for the G5?
I'd go to those top 6.
Any of the top 6?
I think if any of those top 6 are capable of winning the American, and if you win the American, I think you got a chance to be a playoff team.
Okay, but don't you need to be? I mean, don't you probably need to be a 10-win team, 10 plus, if not 11-1 regular season team to actually be the highest rated G5 champ? Because you're not just contending in your conference; you're contending with every other team. I thought you were going to say 2. I thought you were going to say Tulane and Navy.
Those are definitely the teams that I like the most, but let me point you to why I would say Memphis at 6 has a chance here. So their schedule is very favorable. Also, if they get Arkansas in a non-conference game in the Liberty Bowl, which Memphis, if they get it together, they got a chance here. So I think if I'm saying any of those teams are capable, I think they could win the league, and that puts them in that 9 to 10 win conversation. I still go back to what we talked about earlier this offseason, and Boise State is a runaway favorite. But if you're telling me the American champion is 10 wins, they'll be at least be in that conversation.
Yeah, I don't think a G5 team with an easier, quote unquote, easier schedule that goes 9-3 has a chance of getting of being the highest rated champion of the G5. I just don't think there's a chance. Because if you have an easy schedule in one of these, like this is what our conversation was around Liberty at this time last year, which is, Liberty, they could easily be 12-0, but they don't play anybody. So how's the committee going to evaluate that, where we knew Boise State was playing a bunch of tough teams, right? Oregon in the preseason, we knew that was going to be a huge game. So I think the committee does have to take a stand here, because there could be a really good G5 team like Tulane. Look at Tulane's schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, if Tulane loses to Washington State and to Ole Miss, that's not a huge deal, like for a G5 program. And if they go 10-0 in every other game and they have a nice win, don't they play like Northwestern? I think they play Northwestern as well. They play another P5 team.
They open with Northwestern
at home, right?
Yes, and they also get Duke at home.
Yeah,
which is also interesting for reasons.
And they play Washington State and Ole Miss.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right?
I mean, they play Ole Miss. They do not play Washington State.
Oh, they don't.
They don't. But
Ole Miss plays Washington State.
Right.
Woo.
I think.
Let's say you beat, but here's the thing: if you beat Northwestern and Duke, but lose to Ole Miss, and then, or let's say you lose to Duke and Ole Miss, probably the best 2 teams on your schedule, but you won the table the rest of the way. That is a better record than maybe going 12-0 in Conference USA.
For sure. I think the question would be, for at least for me, what if a bunch of G5 teams have 2 or 3 losses? And so, to your point, like Boise State could lose to Notre Dame. They could lose once during the season. They're sitting there at 10-2. What's 9-3 versus 10-2, depending on strength of schedule. We'll talk about opportunities. Let's talk about South Florida's opportunity the first month of the season.
Yeah.
Because they get Boise State. That game, I think, is the first game on that Thursday.
That's at home, right?
It's at South Florida.
Yeah.
Then they go to Florida. Then they go to Miami. That is a very difficult start to the season for South Florida. But again,
you beat Boise State, you lose to Miami and Florida, and then you run the rest of the table and you go 10-2 and you're playing in the AAC championship game. Mm-hmm. That is a significantly better resume than any 12-0 team from another G5 league.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we can talk about Liberty's schedule when we get to
Yeah,
CUSA.
we'll get there.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think these American or Mountain or Boise State, the strength of schedule should carry the day.
All right. There we go. Boise State, Mountain West. Let's go to the Mountain West here, all right, which is what's the story that our rankings are telling people around the Mountain West? The story that we are telling people around Mountain West is one of you needs to try to beat Boise. And there's an interesting group of teams, basically 4 or 5 of them, that all feel like they should be capable of knocking off Boise State. UNLV, San Jose State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and Air Force are all ranked in a way that we are telling folks it's Boise State versus the field, but here is the top half of that field that could contend in the Mountain West.
Yeah, it really is Boise State and a big drop to the next team. I think when you look at this list of contenders, this gets at the couple things that we've talked about, like which quarterbacks emerge and also who can overcome some of the personnel turnover. UNLV's played for the conference championship 2 years in a row. They've got a new coach in Dan Mullen. They also bring back 2 returning starters. But they've also got a lot of power conference transfers, and I think we trust Dan Mullen to kind of figure this out. If you're looking for a schedule play, let me point you to San Jose State, because they do not play Boise State and they do not play UNLV in the regular season, and they host Air Force and Fresno State. So it's almost like in the regular season, I don't know if anybody can get Boise, but maybe by the end of the year, UNLV, San Jose State, Fresno, Air Force, like somebody out of this group with all these question marks probably puts it together and looks like a better team in December.
So this may be self-explanatory, but I'm curious, why is Boise such a clear-cut favorite if they're this is a very early in the coach's tenure, and you're losing your superstar running back, and your quarterback looks good, but he's not like a superstar? Like why is Boise so, in an era where everybody loses so much every year at this level, why is Boise still automatically so much better than everybody else? Just pure talent and depth on the roster, in your opinion?
I think it's talent. I think it's also the program. Like we see this with Boise, they don't, down years pretty much are pretty rare. Also, I think to something we talked about earlier, I think Maddox Madsen's pretty solid. I think they also have some good running backs in the program, whether it's Dunbar, Gaines, or the Fresno State transfer, Sherrard. I think they're going to be fine at running the ball. I don't think they're necessarily going to be as prolific with Genty. Also, one of the better offensive lines potentially in the country, and also a defense that brings back, I think, 6 starters that should be salty again. So I think they got the bones of the probably the best G5 team with personnel, track record, and sort of kind of the edge that they have over the rest of the league.
I know you mentioned Calandria getting kind of a rehabilitation opportunity in Dan Mullen's offense, and frankly, anybody should be excited to play in Dan Mullen's offense, especially at the G5 level, where he is going to destroy defensive coordinators, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But they also have a guy named Alex Orji on the team. And if you know anything about how Dan Mullen likes to use his quarterbacks between the tackles, he's got some skills that I think Dan Mullen knows how to maximize. So maybe it's a 2-quarterback system. Because the question I was going to ask you is if who's got the most consistent unit was what I was going to ask you in the AAC. I think it's about quarterback play. One of these teams that we talk about in this top half here, Air Force, Colorado State, and I really like the Nicolosi kid at Colorado State. Who has the best quarterback? Who has the best player that can elevate the rest of the team in a one-game situation? You're playing Boise in a championship game, and you need a superstar performance from somebody. Who has that guy in this conference that could beat Boise State?
I think it has to be UNLV, because I think you could either get good quarterback play out of Calandria or Orji, and maybe it's the 2-quarterback system. Also, the running game that UNLV has, Jaden Thomas, their running back, easily, I think, the best returning running back in the Mountain West for this year with Ashton Genty gone. So I think you could say talent plus Mullen's system, they figure out one of those 2 quarterbacks, or the system by November, December gets that UNLV offense on track. And like I said, if you look at their depth chart too for UNLV, I mean, like guys like was it JoJo Earl, Troy Amire? Like these guys played at Arizona State. They played, Earl plays bounced around at TCU and some other places. Like they have power conference talent. There's just a lot of unbolded players that are not bolded when you look at their depth chart in our magazine where they lost a ton from last year.
So I know you love Nevada's coach, Jeff Choate.
Oh, yeah.
I think Bronco Mendenhall can do some work pretty quickly at Utah State. I think Utah State's going to be a hard out right away. You're not going to know any of the players' names because none of them played on the team last year.
Yes.
But he is a ball coach, man. He knows how to get a team ready to go. He knows how to scheme. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to build a locker room. He's not going to build a national championship team at Utah State. But I think I think they are positioned well to get better quickly. And I would keep an eye, if I'm asking you for new coaches or teams that are sort of in that bottom half of this league that you think could surprise, like I like Charlotte and Temple, for example, in the AAC to be better than people think. What about Utah State? Am I crazy for thinking Mendenhall gets them moving quickly?
Not at all. I would agree with you. There's another team that I like, and I'll get to them just in a second here. But let's talk about Utah State because not only is it Bronco Mendenhall, who did tremendous work at New Mexico last year. They were horrendous the year before, and they got a lot better last year. They just missed out on a bowl game, and now he's going over to Utah State, which is basically a homecoming because he's from Utah. I think he's in pretty familiar territory. I also think, how about the pig farmer? Bryson Barnes at quarterback. He could be one of the Mountain West better quarterbacks. So I love the Mendenhall way of getting the most out of the roster and what they do offensively with Bryson Barnes. I think that they got a chance to get to a bowl game this year. The expectations are pretty low, a lot of turnover, but this is probably where Mendenhall likes to thrive.
10 years ago, if I would have told you that a coach was going to leave New Mexico, or even 20 years ago, a coach was going to leave New Mexico to go to Utah State, and that Utah State was situated to join a big conference over New Mexico. New Mexico at one point, like back when they had Dontrell Moore and all those guys, like
Rodney
that.
Ferguson.
I feel like New Mexico had a moment there in like the mid 2000s, and now if you and Utah State was like irrelevant at that time. And now Utah State is the team going to the Pac-12, and they're the ones stealing coaches from other people. I think that's an impressive trajectory for Utah State. I don't know what it means in the future. I think they're going to be a stable program when they go to the Pac-12 in a couple years. I think it's going to be very stable.
Agree. I'm going to talk about my sleeper a bit here. About Air Force. They had a ton of turnover last year. And a younger team struggled. By the end of the year, they were playing a lot better. Troy Calhoun's teams, they're a little bit veteran. They tend to turn it around. I would not be surprised if we're talking about San Jose State, UNLV, if somebody like like an Air Force made its way into the conference championship game because of good coaching and stability and track record there for Troy Calhoun.
Very, very high floor for Air Force. There's no question about that. All right, let's dive into Conference USA. I would ask how many teams can make the playoff with a championship here, and I think it's one.
I would go one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe UNLV. Maybe. If you're including Memphis at 65, you got to include UNLV at number 60.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were referring to Conference USA for Mountain West.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mountain West, I would go UNLV. By the way, I should mention on the Mountain West real quick. I think there's a chance that Hawaii gets into its first bowl game under Timmy Chang, and watch out for San Diego State. Sean Lewis getting better in year 2.
Yeah, well, he needs to. All right, so the question I asked the AAC is, you kind of said 6, and I thought, well, maybe it's 2. In the Mountain West, it's probably Boise, and that's it if you're being conservative. And then maybe if you're being super liberal about who could get into a playoff spot, maybe it's UNLV, and that's it with Boise, I think. Maybe.
I think
we'll
so.
See.
Yeah.
Conference USA, the story that our rankings are telling you is that there are 2 teams that are not great teams, but they're the best 2 teams in this league, and they're better than everybody else, and we'd be surprised if these 2 teams did not play in the conference championship game. We've got Liberty at number 87 in our national rankings, number 1 in Conference USA, and Western Kentucky, number 89 nationally, and number 2 in the Conference USA rankings, and not another team in the top 110. Everyone, Jacksonville State at 3, Louisiana Tech at 4, 111th and worse in our rankings. This is a can you beat Liberty or Western Kentucky? This question, and our rankings are telling the story of it's a 2-horse race. See you guys in the championship game.
Yeah, this league probably gave me the biggest migraine trying to predict in the preseason magazine. There are so many unknowns in this conference. You throw in Delaware, you throw in Missouri State, and you throw in a handful of the new coaches in this league. There is, between the players, coaches, and membership, it is a there's so many wild cards or unknowns here, which is why I think you default to Liberty. Like, yeah, they underachieved last year, but I think you kind of trust Jamie Chadwell. You trust that offensive scheme. They've got some firepower too. I think they have the most trust factor. And the same thing is true, I think, with Western Kentucky. I trust Tyson Helton. They've been consistently winning 8 to 9 games. We talked about Maverick McIver and Rick Bowie, the offensive coordinator, coming in. They have the most, I think, stability or trust. You get into that next tier, like Jacksonville State loses a ton. New coach Charles Kelly, it's an okay hire. And there's just a lot of personnel turnover. Sonny Cumbie, make or break year at Louisiana Tech. They lost their defensive coordinator to Coastal Carolina, Jeremiah Johnson. That's why they got a lot better last year. So good luck trying to sort this league out. This is the league where there's probably going to be a wild card team, and I have a couple candidates in mind.
Oh, by all means.
UTEP. Give me UTEP will be the surprise team in Conference USA. That's not because Scotty Walden coached at my alma mater. I think UTEP, I trust Scotty Walden. This team's going to get better. You look back last year, October, November, they played a lot of close games. I think they were kind of finding themselves a little bit. So I like UTEP as a sleeper. Also, Middle Tennessee, I think Derek Mason, year 2, defense will be a lot better. Nicholas Fadiano, solid quarterback. Also, would not be surprised if Delaware is one of the better teams in the conference. They have a experienced group coming in. They kind of took some red shirts at a few spots to have some guys available for year 1 at the FBS level.
I mean, does Conference USA have a chance at getting into the playoff ever?
Liberty probably does. So many resources, obviously, just a financial edge on most of the conference. Their non-conference schedule this year, though, at Bowling Green, Old Dominion. Now, they do play James Madison, which is going to be a fun game.
Yeah.
But there needs to be probably given where the rest of the conference is, there probably needs to be a marquee win or two in non-conference play. James Madison would be good. There probably needs to be a power conference win in there too.
Yes, there probably needs to be. All right, I don't have a lot to add here on Conference USA, Lasso. It is unfortunate that this league has kind of fallen where it's fallen.
A lot of unknowns this year. That's the good and the bad is the mystery on the Tuesday and Wednesday games. Braden, you and all your closest friends can check out FIU in Pitbull Stadium, or you can check out New Mexico State. So this league has got a ton of interest for sickos like me.
Delaware, Sam Houston, Missouri State, and Kennesaw State, all very good programs on the lower level, all have come up recently and all have found their way into Conference USA. So we shall see. All right, let's go to the MAC. And the story that the MAC is telling, by the way, remember, no divisions. So just remember that, 1 through 13 here. The story that the MAC is telling us is that there are 4 decent teams that are all going to be pretty competitive and on any given game could absolutely beat each other. And there's no way to know who's better than the other one. But that it would be a pretty big surprise if the championship game didn't feature at least 2 of those 4 teams. Toledo, Buffalo, both ranked in the 70s, picked 1 and 2. Miami of Ohio and Ohio, 3 and 4, although Ohio changing coaches, so we'll see. But those 4 are in the top 4 and kind of a cut above everybody else in this league. And that is the story sort of that our rankings are telling about this conference.
100%. That is, to me, one of the this league has been hit hard by players transferring out. There's also been a good bit of coaching turnover. We saw Scott Loeffler leave Bowling Green for the Eagles and hiring Eddie George. So there's been some interesting coaching hires in this league. But I think if you compare the MAC to right now to where it was like a couple years ago, Braden, you remember like Jordan Lynch and so many of these guys would be stars on Tuesday and Wednesday. We go into the year not really seeing that because of all the turnover. But there's a lot of opportunities. That top 4 is clear. There's like a next group of teams, like 5 through 9. You could rank those any way you want, and there's a clear bottom here. But the top of the MAC should be pretty solid week in and week out.
What about, let's talk about the directional schools in Michigan. Because Eastern Michigan is still coached by our guy, Chris Creighton. But you got them behind the other two, but all three of them together back to back to back. Break down the intra-Michigan setup in 2025.
Eastern Michigan, most likely to overachieve. I don't feel great where we picked them because I use the word trust a lot. I think Chris Creighton will probably get the most out of his roster. I am buying Central Michigan as a sleeper in this conference. I think Matt Drinkall, who comes over from Army, very successful at Kansas Wesleyan. Background on offense, this conference, you can kind of check off if good quarterback, good offensive scheme, innovative coach, they could take off. So it wouldn't surprise me if Central Michigan is the sleeper. Western took a big step forward last year under second-year head coach Lance Taylor. They also had a pretty favorable schedule. A lot of turnover, a little bit harder schedule this year. I think they probably struggled to get to bowl eligibility.
Any possible way that one of these teams is good enough to challenge for a playoff spot at the end of the season as the highest-rated champion?
It's a good question. Toledo opens with Kentucky. And they play Washington State in non-conference play, so there are a couple opportunities there. Ohio also plays Rutgers and West Virginia, and they also play Ohio State, which is pretty hard. It's probably going to be hard to go into Columbus and get a victory. So I would say this year it seems unlikely, but I think we have seen that the right coach, and if you can keep the right quarterback, I think they could put it together to be a playoff team.
Okay. All right. You want to get to the Sun Belt here?
One quick little breakdown thing on the MAC. I think Toledo, you look at kind of the top. Toledo have had a little bit of a track record of underachieving at times under Jason Candle, but they fixed kind of their run game, which was their biggest thing. Buffalo, though, if you're looking for like a little preseason bet there, maybe sprinkle a little bit on Buffalo to win the MAC. We got them second. I think they're still undervalued in the market.
Like over win total?
Yeah, over win total, and also to win the conference. So
I'm looking up win totals right now.
Also, Chuck Martin, 14-2 in MAC play over the last 2 years, and they get to Quan Finn, the quarterback who was at Toledo, went to Baylor. He should be their starter. So a lot of intrigue again for those top 4 teams.
Yeah, no question about it. In the Sun Belt, I think this is one of the more interesting stories that our rankings tell. Number one, the West is completely wide open, is what our rankings are telling folks, because Texas State is our pick to win it, with Louisiana second, South Alabama third, Arkansas State 4, Southern Miss 5, and Troy 6. They are all within 10 spots of each other nationally, 90 and 100. All of those 6 teams. Basically, who knows? I'm with you. I like Texas State. Louisiana, South Al. I like all those things as well. And the other side, you have Georgia Southern and ODU at 2 and 3 in the East, and they are all inside of that 90 to 100 rankings as well. So we have 8 teams that are all within 10 spots of each other nationally, and they're only about 20 spots behind James Madison, who is clearly the front runner to win this conference and clearly the front runner to win the East. But it's not as imbalanced as the Mountain West, where Boise is so far ahead of everybody else. This does actually feel, and based on what happens in the past in Sunbelt, which is we think we know what's going to happen in that league, and then it doesn't. This is one of the most interesting championship races of all of the G5. I think both leagues are you have 3 really good teams potentially in the East. You have 4 or 5 potentially good teams in the West. I think it's very balanced division by division. And again, if you told me it wasn't James Madison, it was Georgia Southern versus South Al, you can make a case for any number of combinations in this championship. It might be the most interesting race to the championship game of any, because of the parity in this league at the top.
100%. It is wide open. I think James Madison is the front runner, but I also think, as you kind of outlined there, it would not surprise me if 5 teams from the West, or even 6, and also a couple from the East. Like, it is very wide open. But also, I think it's wide open because of number one, there's been a lot of transfers and personnel turnover. There's also, if you look at like two of the traditional powers, I would say Marshall just won the Sun Belt. They lost their head coach. They lost a ton of players. Appalachian State, which has been pretty solid, one of the better teams, new coach, a lot of turnover. They weren't very good last year. So you have a lot of really high quality parity, if that's a term, and also your traditional kind of powers in this conference are trending down, trying to rebuild.
What do you make of the balance of the two divisions? And frankly, Coastal Carolina and App State, as you just alluded to, not even being in this conversation. What do you make of the parity between the two divisions? Is it as balanced as you can remember?
I think so. I think that's probably fair. I when I look at that West Division, I feel like somebody's going to. I don't. Maybe it's not, but it does feel like one of these teams could really get it together. Like you can go team by team.
Southern Miss.
Southern Miss with
I like
Charles
Southern
Stuff
Miss.
and Marshall, all the Marshall transfers. Yeah, I could
I like
easily.
Southern Miss.
They will be significantly better.
Yeah.
By the way, I think their win total is only 4.5 at some places.
Ooh.
Might want to jump on that one. Louisiana with Walker Howard transferring in from LSU, Ole Miss, 5-star quarterback. You got South Alabama, lost Gio Lopez late, but they got Bishop Davenport. You look at Arkansas State, Butch Jones turning things around. And we picked Texas State, who's got just a couple returning starters. So to your point, it's wide open, but I feel like these teams are going to get their act together during the season.
If you're a 5-star quarterback and you transfer twice, shouldn't you lose a star?
Yeah, you probably should.
I feel like you should lose a star. Like former 5-star quarterback, now 2-time transfer, which makes you like a 4-star.
You kind of lose that in the portal ratings.
I feel like you do.
Yeah.
I feel like when you go into the portal, you come out, you lose a star. Sometimes you lose a scholarship, but mostly you just lose a star, I think, is what should happen. Or at least 2 transfers. 2 transfers. You got to get rid of that. You got to get rid of that 5-star moniker, Walker Howard. Like you never delivered on that, big guy.
I think he could be good though at Louisiana. Like it's like kind of like the right,
but
it's
a 4-star quarterback at Louisiana is a huge get. That's a big deal.
It is very big, very big. Also, we kind of touched on Texas State just a little bit, but it is, kind of like alarming sometimes when you look at some of these depth charts, just kind of in passing, and you look at Texas State's in our magazine, and you see, oh, there's all these players with no numbers beside them, and there's just what is it, like 3 returning starters, but you're still picking them to win the Sun Belt. Yes, because of a term that we've used a lot, which is trust factor. And I have a lot of trust that GJ Kinney is just going to figure this out offensively. And with all these teams clustered together, that coaching could be the difference. Kind of the same thing over in the East. I think Bob Chesney's a rising star at James Madison. And I know they lost a lot, but portal acquisitions, they did a good job reloading. Old Dominion, probably my sleeper in this conference. Keep an eye on Colton Joseph as a breakout quarterback for Old Dominion.
I like all of that stuff in this league. I just like the Sun Belt. I just think it's a good league. I think it's like Mountain West. I just think those are fun leagues. Now I think the American is still clearly the best of all of these G5 leagues. So if by the way, anybody from the Sun Belt outside of James Madison have any chance at contending for a college football playoff spot as the highest rated Group of 5 champion?
I think it's unlikely this year, right? I mean, it just feels like it's James Madison. And if James Madison is not as good as we think, I guess it's possible that one of those teams from the West like punches way above their weight. But James Madison plays Louisville, they play Liberty, and they play Washington State. Like they have some opportunities for some good wins. If they're not good, I don't know where that other contender this year comes from.
Yeah,
for playoff purposes.
I agree. All right, here are our G5 top 10. Here's our rankings. Boise is number 1 at 25. Tulane and Navy are 48 and 49. So the top 3 are Boise, Tulane, and Navy. South Florida checks in at number 58. James Madison checks in at 59. UNLV is next at 60. UTSA is next at 63. Army is 64. Memphis is 65. And Liberty is 67. That is your top 10 G5 programs. And if my math is correct, that is 6 of the top 9 programs are all in the AAC.
Anybody that you like that is not in our top 10? Anybody you think I'm too high, too low on so far?
I mean, you know way more about these rosters than I do. I could see somebody from the MAC. I could see someone from the MAC creeping into this list, into that middle of like, because you've got them kind of in the 70s. You've got some of the Mountain West teams in the 70s and 80s. I could see the MAC champion being a top 5 G5 team and being closer to sort of Boise State, Tulane, Navy than we're giving them credit for. So I don't know. I'm with you. I kind of like Miami of Ohio from like a dependability standpoint.
Yeah.
But like, let's say Toledo runs away with this thing and they go 10-2 and they win the MAC championship. Like, I think they're going to be up there with Navy and South Florida and JMU. I would guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
see that.
Maybe Liberty could do that. I don't know.
I could see Toledo or Buffalo.
Yeah.
Ohio is the defending MAC champion, but and Brian Smith was the offensive coordinator last year, so it should be seamless. But they also lost a lot, so I don't know. I think it's going to be hard. I think it's hard to go back to back in leagues like this where the margins are pretty small. So I think, to your point, like, you give Chuck Martin a little bit of credit for dependability. Ohio probably reloads behind the quarterback, but yeah, if Toledo, Buffalo, somebody gets together, they're probably in this top 10.
I would definitely say top 10. The question is, how high up that list can you get? So really, it's Boise, JMU, and the winner of the AAC is what we're saying are the three that could be challenging for the playoff spot, with Boise State as a heavy favorite to make the playoff. Is that where we're at on this?
Yeah, I do. I think Boise State is a heavy favorite to be the G5 playoff team. Now, that doesn't mean they will, but I think just based upon what's on paper, you also could look at it as, if these AAC teams are as good as we think, do they beat up on each other a little bit, which just opens the door for Boise. Maybe they lose to Notre Dame, but they don't lose again in conference play. They have a clear path to double-digit victory. So I think there's a chance the AAC could beat up on itself. They may have the best conference, but they may beat up on each other for that playoff spot.
So I just pulled up the odds just to double check. This is just DraftKings because I happen to have it, on my, accessible. Boise State is plus 190 to make the playoffs, which is 12th in the country. They are behind only like the ones you'd expect. The only teams that have negative odds are Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Oregon, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, Notre Dame, and that's it. There's only 8 teams with negative odds. Then you have LSU, Ole Miss, Miami. I don't like any of those 3 other than maybe LSU. And Boise State. You got to go all the way down to Tulane at plus 650 and Navy at plus 800, and they're outside of the top 30. They're like 33 and 34. Respectively on sort of the odds. So even though we have Boise State at 25 as the 25th best team to make the playoffs in our power rankings, they are 12th according to the Vegas odds. So Vegas is agreeing with you that Boise State is the extreme and heavy favorite. So there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. I love this is a really interesting looking year. And the more and more the portal management thing becomes such a problem for G5, the more interesting it gets to me from like a competitive balance and predictability standpoint. So AAC, best league, in my opinion. Mountain West 2, Sun Belt, maybe the most balanced. MAC has a really interesting race at the top, and then Conference USA is just lacking in almost every category, unfortunately.
Yeah, but they do give us
except for new and diverse uniforms.
That, and also great Tuesday and Wednesday games. They're like the appetizer for Maction in November.
It's not good when you're the appetizer for Maction.
It's for sickos like me who's going to watch Sam Houston and FIU and any game that's on Tuesday or Wednesday night. Yeah.
If you are watching on YouTube, thumbs up, notifications turned on. We do appreciate it. Share the product. If you are listening on a podcast app of choice, thank you for being with us. Please write a review, 5 stars only. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. See how that works? You just got to put some more stank on it, Steven. And, of course, buy those magazines, athlonsports.com. Anything else, Steven, for the good folks?
Also, NFL and Fantasy Magazine, also on newsstands right now. We've got a lot of great stuff up at athlonsports.com, too. So come by and check out the website.
There you have it. Appreciate all you guys listening. Appreciate all you guys hanging out with us. If you're watching, appreciate you guys as well. For Steven, I'm Braden. We'll talk to you next time. Peace and love.